This is Dan Schneider. On this Dan Schneider video interview, I will be speaking with Ryan Daniel, a photographer and videographer from Pale Blue Wave, and the conversation will begin in a moment. Ryan Daniel is my guest. He's a videographer and photographer from Portland, Oregon. He has an online mini empire, let's say, Pale Blue Wave. He's on several of the media outlets, most notably YouTube. And he does little interviews slash man or woman on the street interviews with people he photographs. But as I usually like to do, I want to give people a chance to introduce themselves. So welcome, Ryan. If you could just give a little bit of background about who you are, what you do, and especially, your interest in photography and videography.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, first of all. So background about what I do. I mean, I'll just say very broadly, I started working actually in the corporate world 20 years ago and gave up kind of all my creative aspirations when I started working in the corporate world. And then after a series of events, I found my way back into it probably about 2 years ago. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to do something creative again. So I bought a camera and went into downtown Portland, which is my hometown, and I started doing street photography, so just candid stuff where I wasn't talking to anyone. And that was difficult, but also rewarding. But I also had some negative encounters with people on the street doing that, um, which led me to start actually talking to people. Because I'd see people on the street that I'd like, oh, I'd love to get a portrait of them.
Uh,
And and so I'd approach them and do portraits. And as soon as I started doing that, I fell in love with it. Just everything about it, the interaction, and the photography itself. And then, yeah, from there I started realizing I was having these really fun interactions. But I didn't have any video then, so I just had the camera. But I'd have these interactions that were like whole story arc, but people were only seeing the final photograph,
uh,
because that's what I was posting at first. And then I bought a GoPro and should record the whole interaction and start making these videos. And it was a hobby at first. Like I was still in the corporate world working
uh,
and doing my photography on the side, but it grew really quick. And I was able to go, well, actually, I got laid off about a year and a half ago. I got laid off, and it allowed me to transition into doing this full time.
so before you were in the corporate world, were you a photographer? Were you an aspiring Spielberg or what? what?
Actually, that's what I wanted to do, was do film,
Uh-huh.
when I grew up. But that was like when I was 18, and
Uh-huh.
I remember like getting into my 20s and being like, man, I've accomplished nothing. Like I wrote one screenplay and it didn't, I mean, I don't know. It was, you probably got to write like 15 of them before you get good at it. I would, like you got to do it a lot. And I wrote one and kind of like, I, I ended up moving to Japan to teach English, and I bought a camera when I was going over there, but it was like an old school Sony camcorder. So it was like a video camera.
Hmm.
And I started making these videos while I was over there, and they were kind of like travel vlogs that I made into music videos. I'd use like my favorite music.
Yeah.
And that's when I like really felt the creative. It was like me and the introduction of being creative, um, jumping into that art world. And I loved it, but then I felt like I needed a job. And as soon as I got a job, when I came back to Portland, I just had no energy for anything creative. Like all I cared about was my corporate life and climbing the ladder, and I did that for like 20 years straight.
Mm. Yeah, I know I have an acquaintance of mine who recently made a film with another friend of mine on this poet that we know, and he spends years. Actually, he's still in the corporate world, and he's helping that to fund his film. But um, so, what photographers influenced you or made an impression on you when you were younger? You mentioned street photography. Give me a few names, if you will.
Well, actually, a lot of my inspiration comes from film. Like
Uh-huh.
a lot of the way I see it, a lot of my style, I try to. Well, I guess I grew up on like old school films, like Fellini, like old Italian films,
Yeah,
Stanley
yes, I
Kubrick.
actually, just before we started this, I saw your interview with a young girl that you interviewed, and I thought of Giulietta Messina from uh,
Oh yeah.
Fellini's films.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I do follow some street photographers, but they're mainly probably newer. So, like Trevor Wisecup is one of
Mm.
my favorite street photographers. Um, and also, I like kind of know them by their handles, like their Instagram handles, not
Uh-huh.
even. Um, so, I would say I don't have a massive background in photography. That's the thing.
Okay.
I like when I started this, I learned literally from the ground up. I had never really done photography. I had my eye kind of tuned in from doing the videos. And the thing about it is I always felt like it just came somewhat naturally to me. Like I have to work hard at what I do, but the the basic, like having the ability to get what I want out of the end product always like just happened for me. So if I have a vision, I can like find a way to make it work. But I do work. I've worked like insane. I've worked more in the past year and a half that I own my own business doing this than I ever worked in my corporate jobs.
Mm. So you mentioned street photography and the hidden, some people might be offended by it. Have you? Do you know about Vivian Maya, who was the street photographer who died, and her stuff was found after her death?
I didn't know the backstory, but I know her name. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you doing those kinds of surreptitious things, and were there any incidents where someone was, threatening? Because, well, you see all these videos online, for example, with people, for example, who would do what they call constitutional amendment audits, where they're testing, whether the
Yeah, I
police,
know.
do stuff. And so, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
did you ever have like these angry Karens, as they would call them?
I have, yeah, twice.
Uh-huh.
And one of them was actually kind of traumatic in that it's the reason I got the GoPro.
Hmm.
Because this woman who, so I was doing just these candid, so serendipitous, like, no, I wasn't talking to people.
Hmm.
And I was taking a photograph of a man walking towards me. He was like a grown man with like a hat on that was interesting. So I just like popped a photo of him. And this woman out of the blue, she wasn't even in the photo.
Hmm.
She was like out, she was to the side, not even in my direct path, ran up to me. She was probably like 25 and just looked completely normal, like a normal person on the street. And she just went off, just like, you can't do that. Are you a freak? Like, you can't just take photos of people. And I know like, if you're in public, you have no expectation of
Right.
privacy.
Right.
I didn't go down the legal path. I was just like, hey, have you heard of street photography? Like, I was going to show her kind of what I was doing and show her some like other artists who are doing it. And she just had she didn't care at all, right? She was just pissed off. And then well, she started videotaping me then, which was like, she pulled out her iPhone, started videoing me. And I was like, hello. And then I started taking pictures of her. And then because that like really escalated it. Like, I'm like, wait, this was like a month into me having a camera.
Uh-huh.
I'm like way more mature now about being on the street, but not that that was wrong or illegal or anything, but more that I'd rather just de-escalate the situation and walk away now.
Yeah, it's one of the things you never know if someone could pull out a gun or something. It's like I work in retail, and if a customer gets angry, you say, "Okay, I'm sorry, sir," and you walk away, because even if it's someone who's a dwarf size, they could go out and pull an eight, come in and kill 17 people, or something.
Exactly.
Um, but so, what percentage of people that you decide to film agree to be filmed or agree to be showed?
There's really like segments actually. Usually, okay, when people ask that, I'm like, okay, usually it started like 80% yes when I first started this 2 years ago. And since then it's definitely drifted downward to where I'm more like 60% now. Yeses. But then you can like segment it out by different groups of people. And I've been tending to like ask older people more recently. So I really like talking to like 70 plus.
Really?
Um, yeah,
Because it's interesting. Because when
but
I was looking at it, I know you're not the only one who does this. About a year or so ago, there's a fellow I think in Scotland. There's a fellow down in Florida who does similar things. The Florida guy I think does mostly homeless people or people on the lower end of the economic ladder. And I noticed just looking at again just before we spoke, it looked like in the last couple of months it's like 90 to 95% female. And I'm just wondering if do you go through cycles where it's mostly female, then like you said, mostly older people? Or...
no, no. So yeah, this is really interesting. I actually had to create a new YouTube for. So if you look at like my Instagram,
Uh-huh.
you'll see it's like a pretty fair shake between men and women. I mean, it's probably like 60% women, 40% men. Maybe it might be 70-30. But then like the age ranges is pretty wide age range also.
Yeah. I'm just
But
I'm just looking at a guy with a flaming red beard here that you.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but the problem, okay, this is what happened on my YouTube. So I had a few videos go viral, and they were all women. Like
Yeah.
and when that happened, I got a ton of subscribers. So like, I don't know what I'm at now, like 275,000,
Uh-huh.
something like that. But 99% of them are men on Pale Blue Wave. That's my subscriber base on men. So when I post my videos with men or with anyone outside of the age range of like, let's say 18 to 30, if it's like a 70-year-old woman, my click-through rate is just abysmal. It's like 2 to 3%
Yeah.
because of the audience. And I realized that I tried so many ways to get around that. There's like all kinds of settings to get away around that, but I could never find success with anyone outside of 18 to 30-year-old women. So I created a whole new YouTube account and I post all my men and older people on that account,
Ah, okay.
which is wild. Like, I wish I didn't have to do that,
Yeah.
but also only half of my work was being appreciated on YouTube. So it's like, okay, I'll just make a whole new account and make sure that one is finding an audience that's broader, right?
And is that listed under
Um,
the Pale Blue Wave name?
no, it's a totally different name. Yeah, I've actually never shared it, and
Oh,
I'm just,
okay.
it's like,
Okay, that's fine. You don't have to.
yeah, I mean, I don't care, but it's like growing very slowly,
So what
which is
what
normal.
what does Pale Blue Wave mean? Does it have a personal significance to you, or what?
Yeah, so Pale Blue was based on a novel by
Okay.
Carl Sagan called Pale Blue Dot,
Yeah.
all about just the craziness of the reality of being human, that we're on this rock flying through the universe, and how wild that is. And in my 20s, I watched Cosmos, which is by
Yeah.
Carl Sagan,
Yeah.
and it like blew my mind because I never really thought about my existence that much. And that was like a turning point for me. So when I came to like think of, hey, I need a name for photography, Pale Blue Dot came up, and that's where Pale Blue came from. And then Wave is just like it's kind of like how I see my life, where sometimes you're on top of the wave and things are going great,
Mhm.
and sometimes you're getting smacked against the rocks.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, there's the famous photograph taken, I think, from Voyager 2 around Neptune, where you see the Earth seemingly hanging just in a little tiny sliver of sunlight. So that's where the pale blue dot comes from. And his famous speech is like, every bully you've ever known, every wannabe dictator, every good person, everything that we've ever known happened there on that little pale blue dot. Yeah, so I was I'm a bit older than you, but I remember that was quite an impression too. So what was the ultimate goal when you started the photography? And was it just to give these little 1-2 minute insights into these lives that come and go and that you're never going to see again? And have you had people come back to you 6 months, a year later, and they say, "Wow, people keep coming up to me. I don't know if you have a subway in Portland or the train system or whatnot, and say, yeah, a person came up to me and said they saw me on the internet. Wow."
Uh, so I guess the first one, my goal. The goal was more very personal goal of just having fun and having just pure freedom. Like why I got into this was I wanted to go out and just do whatever I wanted to do. And I had come back from hip surgery. I had 2 years of chronic pain and hip issues that caused all kinds of other issues in my body. And I dealt with chronic pain. I couldn't sleep and I was very depressed for quite a while. And then I ended up getting hip surgery finally. It took the doctors forever to figure out what was actually wrong with me. And then it like literally took a year and a half. And then I finally got hip surgery. And as I was coming out of hip surgery, I was in bed for quite a while. I just couldn't even go outside really. And when I started being able to walk again, I just had this feeling like, man, I need to like change my life because I'm pretty unhappy with my where I'm going and I didn't like work was great. It was an awesome paycheck, but I was very unfulfilled. So the point of buying the camera was just to finally like listen to my own self and have freedom. So that was my goal. There was no goal of like we're gonna build this, empire of all of these followers, and I didn't even know I was gonna make videos, right? Like I really had no idea what I was gonna do. It all just kind of happened. As soon as I started falling in love with it, and I started doing it more and more.
So
And then
have
yeah, Pete.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
Well, so are you able to now make a living doing this?
I'm doing it okay.
Yeah.
Scraping by. It's kind of touch and go. The biggest problem is dealing with the networks who just constantly cause problems, like YouTube, TikTok,
Oh.
just constant issues. So like I got demonetized on TikTok for no reason, and there's never anyone to talk to.
But you're,
So it's
but you're
just
not using any. You're not using film clips from a film. So what kind of
no.
issue could they
That's
have
the
if you
thing.
have the consent of the person?
Yeah, they just say, okay, so it's so absurd. They just say, we have a security concern, and they list 15 things it could be. Like you're using bots, I don't know, all this stuff, and I don't do any of them. I've
Yeah,
never used bots, I just make my stuff, It's
yeah,
all original content. And I appealed it, and you have 500 characters. So I like wrote this thing like, hey, everything I've never done any of these 15 items. Everything I do is, and they denied my appeal because I think it's all AI.
yeah.
Honestly, I think like no one actually reads it, and they denied my appeal, and then I lost monetization. And that's just like one example on top of so many. So it's like you can kind of make a living, but it's pretty. You're really bound to these networks who can just turn you off at any point.
But I'm still wondering because I know when I first started doing these interviews, I've done over 450 of them. I think it was like 15, 20 interviews in. I wanted to do a show on public domain film noirs, and all of them were in the public domain. I used like 30-second clips. This is like 10, 11 years ago. 30-second clips from the 5 films, and they were all listed on YouTube as being public domain. One of the films I used though, some asshole in Germany claimed it, and I said, fuck this shit. I'm not doing this anymore. And so that's why you and I talking, people can't say I'm infringing, but I'm still finding it hard to see when they say these bots, how is it a bot when you can see your hands sometimes shaking someone's hand in the actual video?
No, it's like they think I'm buying traffic because it's like monetized, so they think I'm
Uh-huh.
like sending bot traffic to get views. It's like, yeah, I don't do that. I've never done that. Actually, people do it as a way to attack other creators. You
Hmm.
can buy bot views and get someone demonetized.
Huh.
Like it's this, I don't, there's just this like evil force outside. I don't know. I've also dealt with tons of copyright infringement. People stealing my work
Okay.
and then reposting it, getting monetized, making money off of it. It's like a
I remember
constant.
when blogs were a big thing 15, 20 years ago. I'd sometimes find my own essays, on, so and so's site from Bolivia or something, and
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
I'm not even going to pursue it. If it got a few extra people to read it, yeah, it's not like I was going to make money on it anyway. But so let's talk. There are the hand. We'll talk about a handful of the interviews you did in a little bit, but what you're walking down the street, you want to do in a day, do you find two or three people in a particular day, or is it usually every couple of days? What is it about this person that gets to you that another person doesn't, or is it just something random that clicks in your mind at that moment?
Yeah. It's very impulsive.
Uh-huh.
It's almost immediate. Where the thing is, it's okay. When it's really good, it's immediate.
Yeah.
And I know I'm gonna say something, and it's like 100%. And what it could be so many different things, but it's just kind of a feeling that I've learned how to cultivate really well,
Uh-huh.
and listen to myself. But then there's like that happens maybe like 10% of the time where I'm like 100% all in, like this is gonna happen. I'm gonna go approach. And then the other 90% of the time, I'm like, oh, I got to get closer and see what's like, oh, this is interesting, but let me get closer. And then out of that 90% of the time, it's like I only talk to maybe 10% of those. So I'm like constantly, it's like a meditation almost. I'm constantly just always in the present and looking at my surroundings.
Hmm.
Mm, yeah. Is there any, I might have forgot to answer some things, but.
So, do you just stick to Portland, or if you go traveling, do you take it? If you're going to go visit your parents in California, wherever they may be.
No, I've never done that.
Uh-huh.
I probably should, but honestly, when I travel, I like need a vacation.
Hmm.
To me, it's like it feels like work now almost, At first it was like it was very fun and exciting, and now it's still fun, and the interactions still bring me a lot of joy
Yeah.
and excitement in the moment, but it's also like so painful. The process is painful, like getting denied all the time. Still painful, even after like
So,
hundreds of
do you feel
denials.
do you feel like the class nerd who wants to ask out the pretty cheerleader then?
It's just that social anxiety, like of approaching a stranger randomly.
Yeah.
But like I just do it anyways. It's like jumping into an ice bath.
So, at the place that you are now in your life at this age, and you're doing this, and you've had there's at least a handful of you got at least three segments that have gone over 1 million views. Where do you see yourself in like 5 years? And I ask this because uh, you have a good vocal presence behind the camera, and I'm wondering if you ever want to do more like journalistic stuff once this retires. There's a fellow, I don't know if you ever heard of him, named Peter Santinello, who's a fairly well-known internet journalist. He does his own stuff. He goes all around the U.S. and he'll go to certain towns or neighborhoods and talk about, there's a drug epidemic in this area. Let's go to that. He once went to a hotel in Alaska where the whole town lives in the goddamn hotel, and so it's
That's
just
amazing.
yeah. I mean, and it's one of these high-rise hotels from the 1950s or something. But
Wow.
it's an interesting thing that he does, and I'm just wondering, 5, 10 years from now. Do you view yourself morphing into something else or beyond this with doing this occasionally or what?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think about it all the time, and because I've been doing this for 2 years now, and I have evolved. Like at first, I wasn't talking much to people. It was more like we're gonna do the photo shoot and that's it. And then over the past like 6 months, I've really been focusing on storytelling,
Mm.
and and that is where I want to go in the future, more and a lot more long form content.
Mm.
So and yeah, I would maybe I don't know about journalistic, but there's this one guy called what is it? Soft White Underbelly. Have you heard of him?
That was actually a band alternate name for Blue Oyster Cult, a band from the 70s, but I haven't seen
Really?
it. Yeah,
Oh.
they used to play in small bars as Soft White Underbelly. But anyway, no, I haven't heard of the videos, guys.
He's like he does interviews and they're with kind of the people on the outskirts of society.
Ah,
And usually they're very like dark and pretty depressing and traumatic. They've lived traumatic lives. And I'm like drawn to that sort of story. Um, but the problem is that like artistically you have one vision. I have this for me. I have a vision that I want to go towards. And then I know the reality of my situation, which is I'm living in a world where you have to deal with YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram censorship and demonetization. So there's this balancing act where it's like I want to tell like dark, sometimes dark stories, but how do I not get just demonetized and censored by these huge platforms?
yeah. Well, I mean, you can't, you can't use certain words like related to sexual violence, or they'll demonetize. They won't take the video down, but they'll demonetize it or something because it might someone might have a stroke or something. But yeah, it is kind of silly. But I would recommend if you get a chance, look up Peter Santinello. And I interviewed a guy named Eric K. Swanson, who also he did interviews with homeless people in New York. It might give you just an idea, not that you would copy their kind of stuff, but give you an idea of where you might want to go. That's just
Sure.
if you get a chance. But so let's talk about some of the videos. I'm looking at your popular video ones. The most popular one apparently was one I remember this girl before I guess it took off, or maybe about 4 or 5 months ago when I first found you. It was one of the first videos I saw. That she's always felt ugly. That girl. So when something like that comes out during the course of your little interview, and I think you said on one of the videos, it only takes 5 minutes or so for you to get all your stuff. Was she one of those people that you had that impulse to approach, or was she like a secondary choice that you're like, oh wow, And do you often have those things where you're like, oh, I almost missed out on this one because I wanted to interview person A, but person B was the better choice?
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. I'm like, oh wait, and then this person, and I'm like, wait, and then I like start doing this. I start doing this like
Uh-huh.
portraits with this person, and then the other person walks by, and I'm like, oh, like because they went into a shop, but yeah. So the one that I feel ugly or she feels ugly, that one, that was not. That was a very interesting one because I think it was like I was out for 2 hours. It was getting a little dark, and I don't think I talked to anyone that day. And that's so depressing, like for me to go home empty-handed. And I saw her sitting there, and I was like, no, like I don't know. I was just like, I don't know. It wasn't like instant. So I just walked around a bit, and then I came back, and she was still sitting there, and I was like, all right, I'm just gonna go ask, because why not? I like honestly sometimes I'm like, why not? Um, which is interesting because you like this one taught me like you never know what's gonna happen,
Mm-hmm.
like and I shouldn't be like I used to be really like have this vision of a perfect subject. And I've really let go of that throughout this process, and I've realized that like everyone could be a perfect subject. But yeah, with her, it was pretty shocking because she opened up really quickly. Like we talked, she said yes. We walked over to do the first like shot, and I was like, have you ever done photos? And she was like, no. And I was like, oh, okay. And it's like, because I always feel ugly, or just like really blatantly out there like that. So much that it shocked me when I didn't know how to respond,
Mm-hmm.
because that's such a intense thing to say. Um, and I actually had to come back. This is the cool thing about editing, is that in the moment I was at a loss for words, and I was like, oh. Really? And I said, like, have you always felt that way? Which was like, okay, that's a good, like, kind of question to get more out of it. But then later I came back. Like, then it was a 20-minute, this was like a 20-minute interaction.
Uh-huh.
And then we started shooting more. And then in the back of my mind, I was like thinking through that she had said that. And then at the very end, I brought it up again. And that's where, like, you hear the whole story. You can see it's in a different location.
Yeah.
And that's where I really fleshed out kind of her thoughts on that. And yeah, I love that about what I do, because sometimes I'm not the quickest person. Like, I'm kind of like a slow thinker, So I have times, I like that I have like the ability to edit things,
Yeah.
So
Well,
that was a good one. Yeah.
there's the saying that everyone has a story, but by the same token, most stories are going to be trite. They're going to be familiar. They're going to be rather boring. So
Yeah.
it comes to, how do you frame the story? What point of view are you going to have? Are you going to parallax that with something else? So you just, in this instance, gave a little story, and you had the 20 minutes to sort of get to that. But what, with your typical interview or approach, if you want, does that happen more quickly? And have you had stuff where your expectation was somehow flipped on its head?
So yeah, I've had everything up to a minute. I've had interactions that are a minute that became videos.
Uh-huh.
I mean, maybe it was like a minute and a half, and I edited it down to 45 seconds or something. But in terms of things getting flipped on their head, almost always, because there's this part of my brain that wants to protect myself, and I like make up these stories about people before I approach them in an attempt to make myself not approach them. Like, oh, that person looks like they're really mean, or like they're in such a hurry they wouldn't want to stop for me, or like, I make up some story, and it's some protective thing my brain does, and I've learned to never trust that voice in my head, and just approach and see what happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like you never really know someone until you talk to them. You can make some assumptions, but usually, at least for me, they're not super correct.
So you mentioned that you have a whole separate site for older people and other, I guess, stuff. And you mentioned with the younger females that the click through rate just and that just came back to me. Do you get paid more for this click through rate, and what exactly does that mean? I'm not familiar with the terminology.
No, you don't get paid more. A click-through rate is like how often someone clicks your thumbnail, based on the number of views there are. So if there's like, they call them impressions. Let's say you get 100 impressions and 10 people click. That's it's a 10% click-through rate. So 10% of the people click through. And the higher that click-through rate, the more YouTube is like, oh, this is obviously, this thumbnail is getting people to click through, which YouTube wants. But that's just like one signal. There's a ton of other signals that YouTube uses to understand if this video is worth putting out to a wider audience. Like average watch time.
Okay, yeah.
Retention rate, like how long people are staying, where they drop off. So like click-through rate's one thing, you know, but it's a good like if your click-through rate sucks, if it's like 1 to 2%, you're just never YouTube is never really gonna push it that hard. So yeah.
So when you, if you're doing like the females versus the males or older people, what is the difference in the stories that you get from them? Is the do the older people, are they more embittered by life? Do you think, or do the older people come up with some gems? Philosophically
Yeah.
speaking.
Well, I would, okay, this is just my experience. I mean, obviously you can't say all older people are like this, but from my experience, they're, first of all, they say no a lot. Like 80% say no to me in the first place. And then the 20% who say yes, they tend, well, first they just have more experience in life. And I think that lends to better stories just because they have a wider range of things that have happened to them. And then also, I find that they don't have a filter that other younger people tend, not all of them do, but a lot of younger people, they've seen something like this before. They understand it's going to be on social media. And I think it kind of changes how they interact. Whereas when I'm talking to an older person, there seems to be just unfiltered conversation that I find I just like it a lot. Like I'm attracted to that.
Hmm.
I want to hear like the truth from people,
Yeah.
and I want to see who they really are, and I get that a lot from older people.
I know I'm 60 years old. I can't wait till I retire, and I don't have bosses or someone that I could piss off. And I'm outspoken enough as it is, but
Yeah.
you ain't seen nothing yet until I retire. But
I always felt that way too when I was working. I was so like I had an Instagram
yeah.
where I was doing this photography, and it was like a nightmare thinking about my boss seeing one of my reels, you know?
Hmm.
So, but I was just like, "Oh, I'm gonna do it anyways, you know? Luckily, I don't have to worry about that now.
So have you seen any of these other people that do similar things? Like I mentioned, there's a fellow in, I think it's Scotland, there's a fellow I think down in Florida, and like I said, they seem to specialize too. I'm just wondering from what you said if like the guy who does mostly the homeless. I wonder, and I can't remember their names now. Too much time has passed. Uh, but I'm wondering if similarly they found more success, like this fellow speaking with the lower income people, and you found more success monetarily with the younger women, and the other guy maybe with other things. And do you think too that YouTube boxes you in, that because you've had success with, say, like the girl who felt she was ugly or whatnot,
Yeah.
that the algorithm says, oh, this pale blue wave guy, we want to see more of insecure young women being interviewed or something, because it seems
Yeah.
that way to me when I look at stuff. Because I mean, I don't get enough views. I mean, I get a few hundred views in a year, but I'm not trying to make money. I want to do what I want to do and fucking But it does seem to me that YouTube does promote things, and that it's very easy to box yourself in.
Surprisingly so. I honestly did not think that would happen to me, but then it did. And there's just nothing I could do about it, honestly. It's so interesting because um, it's like a warning. You could use it as a like use case,
Uh-huh.
you know? Like, be careful. But like, I literally was posting everything, men, women, all ages, and then a few went viral and they were just young women. And it was like, you know, you can't stop it. I can't stop the algorithm from doing it, so I have to work around it.
So let's talk about the comments that you get. I know early on, and even before I had a YouTube channel, uh, you know, I I would have been swamped with just negative comments and whatnot. What are your typical commenters, and do you participate in your comment section? Have you had problems where you had to ban some people? Have you had some trolls that just were, you suck ass, blah blah, fuck you,
Yeah, I get that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't participate all that much. I do look every once in a while at the comments, but usually I only look when they are first launched, and I'll spend the first 2 days looking at how that video is doing
Mhm.
and responding. Well, I don't respond to every comment, but I'll respond to a few. And basically, it's like, thanks, cheers, very simple. I'm not like, the problem is, it's just a lot of comments, like a lot across all my different channels.
Yeah.
So, and they no longer, I used to get, and yeah, trolls. I get a ton of trolls. I get a ton of just like ridiculous comments. Um, and they used to bother me. Like very early on, I would get heated. It would like ruin my day. And I'd respond sometimes to people to try to like prove them wrong. Or and they never once did it work. They'd always come back with something more negative as a response, and I learned very quickly that there's just no winning. So I just ignore them unless they're like, I have like banned a few people, but only for extreme stuff. If it's like threats or just way too over the top.
Have any of your subjects not only just said no, but did they think that maybe you were hitting on them, or that you were some creep that was, looking to what is it, to groom young girls, the kind of thing? Because especially now with the Trump and Epstein stuff, that kind of thing gets in the back of people's minds. Some random guy came up onto the street. Don't go near him, honey.
Yeah, no one's ever in real life, like what I mean by real life is in any of my interactions, either yes or no. No one's ever been rude or threatened me or had some assumption that I was up to something nefarious. And I think that's just due to the fact that I'm not up to anything nefarious. And I think people can read that really quickly just through my body language. And I'm always smiling because I'm like happy to approach and happy to talk to new people. And I also have a whole body of work to show people, like this is what I do. Yeah, the comments, of course, like there's a lot of comments like that are calling me a creep. Um, but I just don't let it bother me. Like, there's nothing really I can do about that.
And have you ever had like store owners say they don't do that here, or have there ever been like a cop on the beat that's said, keep it moving, buddy?
No,
No.
no one's, yeah, but I also try to stay on public property. So no one, actually one time a pizza place was like, hey, you can't stand in front of our entrance. And I was like, what? Like, okay. I just said okay and walked kind of to the left, but like that kind of, that's the one time anyone said anything like that. Because I was standing there, but I wasn't really blocking. Anyways, kind of boring story, but yeah, it kind of bothered me.
So I know one of the reasons that I wanted to interview you was because these are anywhere from, like you said, just under a minute to, I think the longest ones might be 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes might be your longest actual video, and it's sort of like a little slice of a nice human touch. And we live in this age where, especially on social media, especially on YouTube, you see all of these videos, and everything. You would think that we're living in some hell. It's Donald Trump. It's AI is going to take your jobs. It's global warming. The end is coming. And these kinds of little interactions seem to be a kind of thing that 100, 200 years from now, in whatever replaces the internet or whatnot, people maybe, because they have things called cyber archaeology now, where people go back and look at the early internet and whatnot. And I can imagine, a century or two from now, people look back and say, not everyone was all fucked up and crazy back then. There were people who just, here's a guy coming up speaking to a woman from 200 years ago, and she's telling her story. And, it's this little moment of connection. And maybe 95% of them may not be deep in the sense that of a Fellini film touching you, but there's going to be that ugly girl or the girl who thinks she's ugly. There's going to be that one who says this one thing that is going to make that connection over time. So is that one of the major reasons that you do that, and is that the biggest fulfillment you get from doing so?
Yeah, it's interesting now that you bring that up. You asked earlier if I had a goal, and the way I've actually been thinking about it is how awesome it would be if, like, 200 years from now, someone watched a Pale Blue Wave video.
Well, especially if
Um,
they're like, going around, sailing around some star in a starship, and they're saying they've never set foot on Earth. This is what Earth was like a couple of hundred years ago.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, exactly. Like, look what they were wearing. Look how they interacted. And look at Portland. Oh my God. Look at the cars, like, look at all those cars. Yeah, that to me is because I got like really addicted to watching old films like from the early days. And it was like, what, I forget what year. It was like 1895, and it was just a camera on a trolley in San
Yeah.
Francisco, and it just goes through, and you're just like looking at everything.
Right, and have you seen the AI ones where they color them so that people look like 95%, and it'll be like walking down a street in Sacramento, California in 1928, and you
Exactly.
see people and they're like, hey this, and then the kids they're shooting the marbles, or the grown-ups are talking, or some guy is swaggering up to the camera and looking straight in the camera, and it's like,
Yeah.
dude, 87 years from now, you're an internet sensation. There's that fat guy in that thing that's bossing everyone around. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's really interesting. And or sometimes, have you ever seen there are sites that do like a photograph, or even like a portrait of Napoleon, and then what Napoleon would have really looked like, and they make him AI and they smile or something, or
Mm,
what George
yeah.
Washington would have looked like, or Alexander the Great.
Yeah. It's all very human, right? Like
Right.
humans wanting, but like it's interesting when you think back 100 years ago, it's hard to have a human connection. But when you see them in a film, that's what that spark is,
Yeah.
when it's like candid like that. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for spending time speaking about it. I'll link to Pale Blue Wave below. I would encourage people to, I don't know if it's public, but if you have other stuff, maybe try looking for your other stuff too. Um, and
Or you can just find all of my stuff is on Instagram.
oh,
If you
okay.
want to see all of my work, Instagram is where to go. But YouTube, I love YouTube though, because they pay. They pay
Good.
me. So everything else is trash, like in terms of giving money. So
Well, I'll link to both
uh,
YouTube and Instagram below. People can check it
yeah.
out. Do you have a link tree thing with all your stuff?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, people can go to Linktree too. So, Ryan, Daniel, thank you very much, and it was a good conversation.
Yeah, thank you. You've asked some good questions that I haven't heard before, so thank you.